Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Triangulation is brought to you by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Triangulation with Tom Merritt and Leo Laporte. Episode 8, recorded March 23rd, 2011. Bob Heil. Welcome to Triangulation, the show where we interview the most interesting people in the world. Leo Laporte here with Tom Merritt. And our guest today, Bob Heil of Heil Sound. Bob, it's so great to see you.
It is so great to be here. Sarah and I have been looking forward to this for a long time.
I've known you for 5 years, but I've only just met you.
That's right. Yesterday was the first time we ever had met.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that great?
I've had some of the best conversations in my life with Bob, and I was really excited to get him on the show. And then I forgot that Mr. Merritt here is a St. Louisan. How do you say that? St. Louisan?
Yeah, Southern Illinoisan, actually.
Southern Illinois,
Southern
yeah.
Illinois.
We're not in St. Louis. We're across
We're on the
river.
other side of the river.
Oh, pardon me. See,
Yeah.
already I'm
already
screwing it
getting
up.
schooled.
But you're both from the same side.
Well, it's funny. I knew I had read that he grew up in Marissa, Illinois. So I said, "Well, you're from Marissa," and he's like, "Well, I don't live there anymore. I'm up in Belleville now." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm from Greenville." He's like, "Oh, do you know John King?" I'm like, "John King was a radio engineer at WGEL. Oh, he's retiring, chief of police tonight." We were off and running from there.
Well, so here's the story. Well, first of all, Bob's best known as an organist. Is that true? I don't know if you're best known.
Been doing it longer than anything, over 50 years.
Everybody,
Yeah, cool.
group skate.
Well, and
This
I
is-
didn't realize you were still doing it. You haven't
Yeah,
stopped.
this is the Lincoln Theater in Belleville.
Okay.
So this is so when we say organist, it's a special kind of
Wait a
organist.
minute. Yeah.
This is movie theater organ.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I'm switching.
Big-
That's in our home.
That's your house?
That's your house organ?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's his house organ.
Yeah. The Lynn Larson,
Wow.
Allen. Mm-hmm.
That's so great. So how'd you start playing the movie theater organs?
Well, I started playing Hammond organ when I was 12. I had these lovely parents that, think about that, in 1952, invested in what was a B3. It was a C.
It was a B3, basically? Did you have
Yeah.
Leslie's and everything?
Yeah.
The
yeah.
spinning horns that go...
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Don
whoa.
Leslie we became good friends. But 2 years later, I started playing in a restaurant. I'd ride there in a bus at night and play at Mary Valentine's. And a guy came in one night and says, "You need to call this guy and maybe he could give you some lessons." And it was Stan Can's phone number.
Stan Can, who I remember, in fact, we were talking about him when the Daily Giz was.
Yeah.
He was the guy who was on Carson, you said 77 times.
77 times.
And he would originally it was vacuum cleaners, but he would demonstrate gadgets, and he was fumble fingered, and it was hysterical because the gadgets would fall apart, and it was the greatest bit ever.
Yeah.
But I didn't know this. He's best known as or at least among organists, as
Exactly.
a great theater organist.
Yeah, and I was just telling, the situation is when you play some of these theater organs, there's a 1 to 2 second delay from when you hit a key to when you hear it.
What? How do you do that?
Well, that is why Stan got this young kid, me, and taught me how to play like that. You don't listen to yourself. You have to play it
Oh, that's
and
really
hope it was
interesting.
right.
Yeah. And you'll find out 2 seconds
You'll
later.
hear 2 seconds later. Well, that must be very challenging.
And
Because
so-
it takes that long for the air to
No,
push back?
no, it was the fact that you're so far away.
Oh, okay.
1,120 feet per second is sound travels,
yeah,
you know. And some of these things get crazy because of all the reflections in these big cavernous theaters.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I still play. I just did a concert in Sacramento.
We have a great, there's 2 great theaters in San Francisco, in the Bay Area that have organs. There's the Paramount in Oakland where they've restored it, but in the Castro Theater.
Well, no, it's Grand Lake.
Grand Lake,
actually,
not
in-
Paramount,
in
Grand
Oakland.
Lake.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's a Castro Theater where they come out of the floor.
Yeah.
And
And
when
the Grand Lake one does
do they do that
Yeah,
too? I love that. So the movie's about to begin, and the organist goes down
Yeah.
and disappears because, of course, you can't have an organ in front of the screen.
But and then what happened is I learned so much about pipe organs and sound and listening. And along with all of that, Leo, I became a ham radio operator at the same time.
How old were you when you got your license?
15.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so being able to put the sound and all of the voicing and tuning, it's an art. And Stanley taught me how to do that. He and Martin Wick of the Wick Pipe Organ Plant.
Yeah.
And being able to voice a pipe organ is really quite quite precious. And that's how I learned to listen. So designing microphones and speakers and all that came down the road later relied upon that early part of putting ham radio and the pipe organ together.
Yeah.
And when I first met up with Jerry Garcia and some of those guys, that was a great story, by the way. I quit playing. I played 6 nights a week, 12 years, 13 years, so on. And I opened this little music store because I knew so much about B3s. And I started renting B3s to the groups because the Steinway dealer, they weren't going to rent them to these guys. And so I started renting B3s, and Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, all these guys had come into St. Louis, and I'm renting them gear.
Because
right?
nobody else trusted them? Or?
Well, they didn't know.
Oh.
Well, no, they wouldn't. If you went to a Steinway dealer, you went in there with hair down to here, and you hadn't taken a bath for 2 days, perhaps, because we'd been on the road, are you going to rent that guy? They won't even let him in the store. Well, hey, they'd come to me 50 miles away and in Marissa, and we got into it like that. But I'm starting.
Was the B3 originally? There's a B3, a classic B3, and that unit on the right, that's the Leslie, right?
Leslie speaker. It's a Doppler system. You know, when a train goes past you and the pitch of the horn goes up and down, the horn doesn't change. It's the Doppler effect that's happening with the air pressure in your ears as it gets closer and it goes away. So Don Leslie, right after the war, started building a speaker that went away and comes back with a motor. And that's for the Leslie speaker. And what would the Hammond be without a Leslie? But I started building all these things, and then I'm starting to notice with all these great artists, the sound was terrible. They're using, they were using little column speakers.
Right.
This is 1966.
To fill a theater.
Yeah, 1967. You got 20,000 kids in Kiel Auditorium with a pair of speakers. Come on. And at the Fox, I had visited the Fox, stopped by there one day, and they're throwing out their big A4s. And I'm going, all right, can I have them? And
The A4 is an organ?
This is a speaker
It's a speaker.
as big as the back wall that we see here. An A4.
As big as this?
Yeah.
Now, why were they tossing them?
They were putting new ones in.
And they figured nobody's going to buy these.
No,
There's
they had
nobody.
them out
Who
at
else
the-
would use them?
Yeah. And so they gave them to me, and I put that system
Because you had a truck, you could move them.
How'd you haul them away? Yeah.
Well, I had to borrow REO Speedwagon. They weren't known by then.
REO
that name.
Speedwagon. Did they have a wagon?
They had a truck, a 20-foot big truck, because they used to come to my store to buy stuff.
Okay. Well, this is when they were still up in Champaign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went, got the speakers, and I put this thing together with Macintosh amps and a Longevin console, and here comes and by the way, Tom Holman, who in 1982 invented THX, Tomlinson Holman experiment. One of his high school buddies was working for me as a roadie, and we hired him to rewire this Longevin console. And I get this call from the Fox Theater, and it's the stagehand. He says, "Hey, you still got those big speakers?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, talk to this guy. They don't have any PA." He handed the phone to Jerry Garcia. And he said, "What you got, man?" And I told him. He said, "What? Is it all work?" I said, yeah. He says, "Get it up here." And so we did, because that
Did you use REO Speedwagon's truck again?
No,
or you had
no,
something
I
else?
had bought- I had bought my own truck by then. But see, that was the wonderful story, piece of rock and roll history, that the night before they had played in New Orleans. They were going to be on a short little tour, and their sound man, the Bear, Owsley, who just died last week, he was on probation from the state of California.
He liked to make acid.
Yes.
And
so,
not the kind that eats through things either. Yeah.
Well,
So-
except your brain.
the feds had taken him out of that concert hall that night, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have hardly any good communication. So he goes back with the gear, because it was his, to California that night. The band comes on to St. Louis without gear. And then they took me right out of the theater that night because...
You're going with us.
Yeah. And I said, "I don't want to go."
You're coming with us.
And they kept opening up boxes of money, and I'm going, really? And one of my roadies, Tom's friend, he said, you want to do this? I said, "No, I'm not going on the road." He said, "Boy, we will." I said, "Okay, go." So that's
sent him.
That's how that started Heil Sound that night. No, actually, it was Ye Old Music Shop.
Oh, yeah?
About a week later, I get this phone call.
SHOPPE?
No, just shop.
Okay.
I get this phone call from Garcia. He said, hey man, we have trouble pronouncing all this ye old stuff. He said, we're just going to call you Heil Sound. Is that okay? And I said, it's great. So it was Jerry Garcia that named Heil Sound.
No kidding.
That's so fantastic. And of course, they were famous.
They could pronounce Terrapin Station, but not ye.
Yeah, exactly.
They were famous for the quality of their stage sound.
Well,
I mean,
that kind of started it all.
and I think they were famous for their big A4s, as a matter of fact, weren't they?
Yeah, after then, they really got into building
They had the wall.
all of that.
Yeah.
Because I had talked to them about that during that time. Garcia would come to the store in Marissa, and we talked about it. And I wasn't with them then because then I had gotten with the Who.
Oh, geez.
We're
going to get to that in a second.
Yeah, so I
But
couldn't
I
do it.
got to ask you a couple more Grateful Dead things. Phil Lesh was playing the bass, right? They had such an amazing bass sound.
Oh, they did.
Huge. Those must have been 5-foot speakers or something. I mean, the sound of the bass.
Folded horns with Macintosh amps.
Okay,
While everybody
tube
else, everybody else is using like little Fenders or Ampeg or whatever. Not the Dead, man. All their amps, Owsley had built it for him with Macintosh.
So he knew what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. He was very talented, very schooled.
Did you ever tour with the Dead, or was that always your guys?
Well, yeah, we did about 2 months with him there
That must
in the
have been
beginning.
interesting.
But were you along all that whole time? Or
I did a couple of the jobs.
Yeah, okay.
But I was back building stuff because we had gotten a call from the Who and everybody else because we hit the front page of Billboard that this little store in Marissa got the Grateful Dead tour. And oh my,
the phone started ringing, huh?
Yeah, it was crazy. And
Because nobody had been doing sound like this up to now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that, Leo. I'm a ham. I'm just having fun with all this big stuff. And it was just the beginning of big sound. Claire Brothers in Pennsylvania and myself, we were really the two biggies that started.
It's also because rock and roll started taking off. Instead of playing clubs, now they're playing stadiums. They need more sound than anybody's really ever done before, right? You can't use a stadium PA system for rock and roll.
And we were very blessed to get with the Who. That was really cool.
Now, so they read about you in Billboard? Is that how they found out?
Well, yeah, they knew about the system, and it started going through the industry like crazy. And I was out with Chaka Khan because they were doing with this Rufus, with the talk box, right?
That's right. They were
exactly.
Tell me that you're wrong.
And we had built this other monster PA, and we were on tour in Chicago with them, and we got a call from the Who said, you got to be in Boston tomorrow night. So we did. And that was a run of about 6 or 7 years of everything. We did every show they did. And
was it Pete who called you? Who?
No, one of their management. But
and what was the need? Why didn't they? What happened to whoever was doing it before?
Well, they came over here with new music. Who's next?
Okay.
Totally new music. And they had 6 little Watkins electric music. It's little columns. I'm not exaggerating. They weren't more than 4 foot high. 6 of them to fill a 15,000-seat arena that was going all
now,
these arenas.
The Who at that time were famous for destroying their gear.
Oh, yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I fixed that one. Maybe I shouldn't tell the secret, but I guess I can't.
Oh, come on.
Because they don't do it anymore. I
remember Pete would jam his guitar into the amp and go, and then beat on the guitar, break it, stomp on it.
I would build 24 guitars for each of their tours. He wanted SGs, and he wanted Les Paul tails, take off the whammy bar, and he wanted tuners that were not the cheap Klystrons. He wanted really good stuff. So I would build these up for him in my store in Marissa, and I knew they were going to get ripped up, and beat up, and tore up, and
this
they
stuff
did.
is coming out of Marissa, Illinois.
Yeah, exactly.
Go Meteors.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so what happened was we'd get on a few jobs, and he'd tear up all these amps. And so I suggested that, hey, why don't we build you this dummy set? And you just tear it up every night. And I put his amps over in a rack that he didn't touch.
All right.
And so,
I thought as much.
But he broke the guitars just every night. And by the end of the tour, they were gone.
And they weren't dummy guitars.
No.
Wow, that's sad, actually.
Yeah.
Does that break your heart to
nice
see that?
guitars.
Yeah.
They were SGs, and I finally got him to using Les Pauls. Oh, yeah, these were the real deal.
SGs, those are great.
But what did they care, you know?
When you were building them, did it break your heart? You're like, you're going to your doom, buddy.
No, but that's okay. And then Moon, who he was just one of the best drummers ever. And Moon would rip up his drums. I
remember that.
Do
They tear
about
'em up.
that. Yeah, we'd have to put new heads on them.
This is not the Who's Next.
No,
not
this
Who's
is
Next.
not Who's Next.
I thought I'd play a little organ music, but I'll stop that right now. This is Bob Heil at home, actually.
Yeah.
And then this is Chaka Khan, actually. Tell me something good. That's the sound.
That's a wah pedal there.
Oh, that's a wah-wah. Okay.
But as they get into it, they do the talk box.
They do that down or something.
There's both of them put together.
So you were touring with them, and you built that. Did they say to you, "I want a new sound," or did they say what that sound was
No,
going
I
to be?
did brought it along, and of course they went freako. Everybody did because they hadn't played through anything like that. Townsend always put it kind of cool. He says, "It's the first PA I can't outplay."
He can't blow it up.
Yeah.
He can destroy it with his guitar, but he can't blow it up.
But he can't play over it because it got pretty loud.
Yeah.
But
Now they also asked you to do something pretty unusual for them.
in 1973, I got this phone call from Pete Townsend. Hey, come over here, mate. I want to talk to you. Okay, Marissa, Illinois to London. So I go there.
Just come on over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'd been there a couple of times on tour with him, but I go to this wonderful little house on the Thames that he lived in, and on the second story was his studio. I didn't take many pictures then. I wished I would have, but that's okay. I wasn't a groupie. I went there for business,
Right.
and here's all these gorgeous guitars and everything, and drum kit, a beautiful 9-foot Bosendorf for a German piano. And I go, by the way, I said, hey, Pete, how did you get that piano up here? And he looked at me like I should know. He said, oh, that was easy, mate. We just cut the whole wall out and got a crane and brought it in and built the wall back.
Easy enough.
Okay, how stupid was I? Little kid from Marissa. But anyway, he said, quad sound right now is big. It's 1970. Do you think you could build a sound system that we could move Roger's voice around the hall?
Oh.
And I said, yeah, we can do that. No's not in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
So we did. Of all the things, when people ask me, all the things I've done, what is your favorite song piece? This is it.
It really is a great
And
song.
that's Pete playing the piano
Yeah.
in his studio. It's really great. Love Reign Over Me.
One of the great
For
songs.
anybody watching and listening, if you haven't heard this, you go get it, turn off everything you got, put your headphones on, you take a listen to this. It's really great.
So they had the album Quadrophenia already? No.
He said, great. You go build it, and I'll go finish writing it.
And hadn't named it yet, but
Well, he knew what
he
was
knew he
gonna-
wanted quad.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
quadraphonic sound had already come out
Yeah.
at that point.
But
He was
it
trying to
really
think-
was a thing about four guys, if you know the story, and which is the band. He's a storyteller. And
Yeah.
he does great things and still does.
Brilliant, genius.
We heard him on the radio yesterday. Sarah and I driving, and it was one of his solo. I love his solos.
Yeah.
He's doing everything. He's
Truly a
playing-
genius.
Doing all the mixing and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a great tour. I loved it, and it ended up that console. We worked with IES, which was a sister company in London, and Bill Hoff, one of their engineers. We put this all together with our speakers and stuff. And one of the speakers of the rear speaker and that console and an amp or two are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's cool.
It was very,
That's
very
cool.
honorable, and I was extremely blessed that can happen, because that's quite a place. And the third floor is a technology floor, and they have the Sun Studio that Elvis, a copy of that. But then they have the whole life of Les Paul, and right next to it is the one room with all the Heil.
Did you ever get to meet Les Paul?
I did.
Yeah.
Sarah and I really were honored. He came to an AES show in New York, and he invited us to come to his sound check and come to the Iridium. And we got to be there for, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours. It was wonderful. And at the end, he was using our microphones, and we were really thrilled. And what a guy.
Yeah.
What a guy.
You know, people know the name, Neumann and Electro Voice and these other big, even Blue. Why don't more people know about Heil? Because I mean, these are the only mics we use in our studio, and people rave about our sound, and they don't know.
When I started this whole thing, see, we build a lot of product each year for ham radio. We started in 1980 for that. One of my best friends all these years has been Joe Walsh. Joe is an avid ham radio operator.
You mean not Dolly Parton? There's a picture of you with Dolly Parton. Is that you on the left there?
That's
Look at that. The young guy.
And that's Ed Drone. Ed and I were the two that really started the whole sound thing in about 67.
Wow.
That was at Kiel Auditorium.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. I got these are all on the site. Here's that wall of sound.
Wow. Check that out.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
How many?
It's all fiberglass.
This was the Dead's setup?
No, not all of that. No, we had the A4s with them, which there's a picture of it on there somewhere.
I'll keep going.
19 speakers.
There you are with
Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck.
1973. Yeah. And,
That's a great pic. That's a great picture.
It was a lovely time. Bobby Pridden of The Who. That was the original console.
So this is the board. Is this now? This is the part.
No, that was the first little boards we had and that first system that we took out with Who's Next.
Wow. Look at the seating. It's metal chairs. I mean, we've come a long way, baby. Do you hear concert sound? Look at this. There we
Now,
go.
that was Humble Pie in Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, and that was the Mavis console.
That's when you met Peter Frampton, I guess.
No, this was after Peter.
Okay.
But I met Frampton.
There's Keith. I mean, Pete. I'm sorry, Pete Townsend.
But notice the horn on the left side. See that
Can you
horn?
see the horn right there?
That's his monitor, Leo.
Yeah, he was deaf.
Well,
Or if he wasn't then, he
Yeah,
was
right.
shortly thereafter.
but I had to have these fabulous monitors for these guys. And it was really one of the things that Heil Sound brought to the industry was monitors.
Now that everybody wears those earpieces.
Exactly. But see, he didn't want all that, anything like that, because he did all the jumping around and so on.
Right.
We couldn't even have monitors on the stage. They had to be off the
okay,
side.
that's interesting.
And so we could do it with horns.
Wow.
Oh,
Holy moly.
what a great guy. And there's the great talk box.
Now, is this the one you made for...
that you see, that all goes back to 1939. I brought something for you, and I thought that everybody would get a kick out of this if they're watching. Back in 1939, there was a guitar player by the name of Alrino Ray.
Oh, yeah.
He married one of the King families. He also was W6 UK, by the way.
A ham.
Yes. And he took, in 1939, a ham. He took this old throat microphone that you used to see on the old pilots.
Yeah, they'd press their throat and speak into it.
Because it was so noisy in the cockpit, right? And it would vibrate those. Well, he did it backwards. He took his wife and put her behind a curtain, and he plugged his output of his guitar amp into the microphones. And they were carbon microphones. And it would cause her voice to resonate with the guitar. And that was the first tailored, whatever you wanted to call it. And it stayed that way until 1950 when Pete Drake did an 8-inch speaker in a funnel. Pete Drake was a steel guitar player from Nashville. When Joe did Rocky Mountain Way, he rented that from Pete Drake.
He rented it.
Pete wouldn't sell it to you or nothing. He had one of them, and he rented it to you in the studio.
And so that was the Rocky Mountain Way studio recorded.
We had done the James Gang with Joe and all that, and he was putting Barnstorm together. And he was at our home on Christmas Day. I'll never forget this. And he said, hey, how are we going to do this talk box thing? So his roadie by the name of Crinkle, great guy from Detroit, he was living in Marissa. They all had a lot of roadies moved to Marissa.
No kidding.
And Joe and I went out and we got a 250-watt JBL driver, built a low-pass filter, high-pass filter, whatever we needed to do. And we put all this, laid it out, piece of hose in the top of it. That was the talk box, the start of it. And then the picture you just showed right there, that was the production that we did for it.
Wow.
And Penny, that was a song.
Penny Frampton.
Penny for Your Thoughts.
Right.
It was a song Frampton wrote.
Mm-hmm.
She called me after they got married and said, I need a Christmas present for Peter. So I sent him a talk box.
Nice.
And that talk box that you hear right there was that talk box and he still has it. He doesn't use it because he carries it around with him. He got new ones, but he carries
it around
as it's his lucky charm.
Well, it was.
And there's a great video on our website about Peter and I sat down for about 15 minutes in Nashville last year. And if you're really into early rock and roll, sit down and listen to that. It's really a nice interview that Peter did, and it made his career.
It did. It was his sound. But you told me that really it was Joe Walsh that was the
Joe
master.
Walsh was the first thing we did.
He was the master.
Rocky
of
Mountain
this.
Way.
Right.
But I have to tell you, Joe did they all do different things. Joe did what I call a guttural sound.
Right.
Peter can actually make that thing.
It talks.
He says words.
Yeah.
I got a really cute thing. I should put it up on the website. Where we were at a rehearsal in Charlotte one time, and he said, "Oh, what can I do for you, mate?" And I said, "Let me talk." And he said something about "How are you, Bob Heil?" And it's just so clear.
How are you?
Yeah, it was really cute. But
I think a lot of people think it's a vocoder
No.
when they hear that.
I did.
'Cause
I had no
I hear
idea.
people say that a lot.
well, a vocoder does the same thing, but digitally. But this has more richness.
It's funny. I mean, it couldn't be more simple. He's got a tube in his mouth coming from an amplifier that's playing the guitar music into his mouth, and then he speaks into the microphone, basically,
See,
right?
the guitar amp's turned off.
Oh, there's no guitar amp.
Only coming through that hose, so it's not very loud.
And so he's using his mouth and vocal characteristics of that cavity to shape the sound.
Adam Jones, a great guitarist from the group Tool,
Yeah.
big metal band. He has a song he did, and it's gorgeous. It sounds like a cello. So you see, everybody does things a little differently.
Right, a little different.
Slash uses one.
Really?
I'll talk
So they're
about
still
it.
used.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of artists. Alice in Chains. Jerry Cantrell's using it.
Here's
So-
a picture of the original music shop, no PPE, ye old music shop van. Yeah. You were kind of a hippie. That's a little Ken Kesey looking there.
But I have to tell you, and I will tell the world, I'm kind of proud of it. I've never drank beer. I've never smoked a cigarette.
Isn't that
nothing.
funny? You're straight
Just
arrow,
me.
Bob. But
Yeah.
you know what? You gotta be straight while all these other guys. You gotta
Well,
keep this stuff going, right?
Pete always said it kind of cute. He said, "That's okay. Leave him alone. He's got a soldering iron. It makes it sound good, and he can
Don't
drive
mess
the
with him."
truck."
Yeah, yeah. And there's Peter playing
Yeah.
that. And
Notice he has a Steve Merritt T-shirt on.
Oh,
Steve
that's
Merritt was
interesting.
the Humble Pie.
Yeah,
He and
yeah.
Steve started
Right.
Humble Pie. Yeah.
What an amazing
Such
sound
an
he used to get
artist,
out
and
of
he
that.
still plays so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
The last tour, they used a bunch of our microphones, and we were at a rehearsal several times at some of the shows.
So I love the pictures. These are all from heilsound.com. These are all from, various, I guess just your photo album. What is this here?
That's the system.
That's it.
Yep.
That's the A4s?
Those were Olsen bins. I got those also from another theater.
Oh, which one?
But
I love it. I love the,
Granada.
I love it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
The
And
Granada?
then those others we built.
There's Sarah.
There's
And,
that's Adam Day, who is Slash's guitar tech for 19
there you go.
years.
There you go. So there's Bob and Sarah, his wife,
Yeah.
and Adam Day.
Yeah.
That's great. There's so many, the images here. There's Adam signing the sign. That
that's
must have
our-
been at NAMM, right?
Yeah, that's our wall at NAMM.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is the guitar tech just for a bunch of people.
That's neat.
And
That's really neat.
yeah.
It's fun to see these pictures,
yeah,
I got to
there's a
say.
lot of history and all of that.
Andy Ebert there. And
We're really happy to be able to keep it going, and here we are back doing it again with the microphones. Joe always told me, he sat me down in his kitchen about 6 years ago, and he said, "You got to do something for me." I says, "What's that?" He says, "You got to build me a better microphone." Well, when I left in 1980, I slammed the door. I sold all my gear.
Really? So you quit this
Yeah,
business?
I just, boom, that was it. I was
What
tired.
was it? Was there something that happened? Or
Yeah.
Can you talk about it, or is it?
Yeah. Punk rock.
I hate those punks.
Sex Pistols and
Well,
Clash and-
the thing is that they weren't what I was doing for 10 or 15 years. You know, it was different. They didn't care about the PA.
Didn't
I
care
mean,
about
to
the
tell
sound.
you, man,
yeah, it was the opposite.
Walsh, Frampton, Pete, everything was right on. I mean, it had to be there. And I lived that life, and then all of a sudden nobody cared.
Yeah.
And then Wendy O. Williams came along.
The plasmatics.
That was the last night we played, and she drove a car on stage and blew it up, and she caught one of our speakers on fire. And I'm going, wait a minute, I don't want to be a part of this, because she was a porno queen turned rock singer. And I said, I've got 2 young girls I'm bringing up, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I said, bye. And I was starting to play with my ham radio stuff, and I started building microphones for that and other things. And so that's how it evolved.
It's amazing to me that the guy who figured out how to handle Pete Townsend's guitar smashing gets run out. Everybody kind of lumps all that stuff together, but there was a difference.
There was a big
he may be smashing guitars, but he cared about the sound.
He did.
And punk rock was a rebellion against that. It was a rebellion against all those standards.
Well, Joe has been an avid ham radio operator, very technical, and called me and he said, come here. And I sat down in his kitchen in Studio City and said, you gotta build me a better microphone. Well, I hadn't looked back. I didn't know that the big names we respected growing up hadn't really done anything new. So Joe and I started playing, and it's really kind of cool to have the Eagles as your beta tester.
Yeah, right?
But no, it was Joe. It wasn't.
So they use them as stage mics, not just ham mics.
He uses it on stage for his solo stuff all the time. He loves all this stuff. And anything I do, I pass by him. And it's really great to have an artist like that that's real technical.
Yeah.
And Joe is.
Pretty
He's got
experienced,
hundreds of radios and stuff. And so that's how it got started. And we just keep going and come up with some great ideas. And I think the best thing we have done has been this rejection thing.
So let's talk about, we got you here.
Yeah.
You designed the mics that we use. We love them. Can we talk about mic design?
Absolutely.
You said rejection. I don't think you mean like you're going to break up with me. What do you mean? Rejection.
We're talking about and this is something Joe is really adamant about, is you've got to get rid of these condensers. Condensers are way too sensitive. They pick up everything in the room. Put them on a stage with 120 dB comes screaming out of 10 guitar amps. Are you kidding?
So condensers are, we
little
still
bitty.
use them, but they're little bitty mics,
right.
and they need power to them.
Because they actually have, some of them have tubes in them. So they have
Really?
preamps built in them. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I really am opposed to that. How silly. But a lot of it's ego. Oh, I have this or that. Okay. Well, what we wanted to do was build a microphone that sounded like that. You can't take the sound of a condenser away.
What is the sound of a condenser? Is it very
Natural.
detailed?
It's got all that top end stuff.
Yeah.
You talk into a ball mic and it's mushy.
It's
like
condensers
you talk on
have
your
that great
own,
high end.
you
They're
know?
very crisp.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted that sound, and we started playing with some diaphragms that I had done for some ham radio projects, and by making them thinner and thicker to some point, thinner to others, and just tailoring that diaphragm, we were able to get the sound. And then going back to my ham radio days, if we had a picture of my 128 element antenna, that was really the big deal. Is I look at microphones like an antenna. They have frequency response.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have gain.
Wrap my head around that.
But when I point my antenna to California, I don't want to hear New Jersey.
Right. Rejection.
It's rejection.
Reject signals that you don't want.
Exactly. How do you do that? Phasing. You take two microphones out of phase, you will hear nothing. If you put them in phase, you get 3 dB.
Yeah.
You get boost.
Yes.
Because if they're out of phase, they're canceling each other out.
Exactly. And I'm going, wait a minute. And so Joe says, why don't you just do that? Well, all of these microphones have 4 little holes around them for the rear rejection. That's not enough. So we built this crazy looking thing like this, top of one.
That's a PR40. This is the Heil
And you
Sound
see
PR40.
all of the screen part, you look at that and say, well, are you talking? No. I had to put this little cartoon on the back. Not everybody can read, I guess. Talking the end of it only. But what happens is the whole bottom of the element is open, not just 4 little holes. And I get all of the rear and side coming in these panels, and they flow up what we call a collection tube into the bottom. Bingo. We get 40 dB a rear, and I can prove it. My mic is on. Watch what happens if I do this. You will hear nothing of me.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's nothing. And
There's nothing. It really zeroed it out.
Get these guys, I have a cordioid pattern. A cordioid's got a spike out the back. I don't want anything.
They can't hear you explaining the cardioid.
Well, they don't know what he's saying.
Yeah. A cordioid comes here.
It's a heart-shaped. That's why they call it
But
cardioid.
then it's got a spike out the back.
So
I
there
don't-
is some, in a cardioid mic, there's some audio
Dang right.
pickup here.
And what I've never understood from the big boys is, why do you have suprachordioid? It's got a longer one. I don't want anything. I want a great big wall right here. And that's exactly what all the Heil microphones do.
Well, so there's two reasons that we use them. One is that this is not a studio. This is not soundproofed. You can hear people talking and stuff. And so I knew I needed something that gave me a studio sound, but was not in a studio environment. But also, it's very, as we all know, rich and deep.
Exactly.
And the high end is great, but you didn't lose any of the bottom.
No. This microphone gets down to around 25 or 28 cycles. That's where we roll it off. And keep it all the way out. But another thing I learned from ham radio, and this was something Joe said, don't you forget your articulation. And we learned that from...
I'm starting to really like Joe Walsh.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Well, the thing is that with ham radio, you got a lot of noise and static, and you got these signals, and you're trying to pull people out of that noise. And if you go back, we were very fortunate that in my early days, I had a phone call from a guy that said, Heil, that you? Yes, sir. Who's this? It's Clips over here.
Klipsch?
Paul Klipsch? Yeah. You got a cornfield I can come and crash in? I said, excuse me?
You're like, we
"Oh,
grow
dang it."
soy around here.
Yeah,
but
he said, dang it, you probably don't have no airport in that little town. I want to fly up and see you. You the guy that's got that 20,000 watt PA? I said, yeah. He said, that's crazy, you know. I said, yeah. He said, I want to see it. So he flew to Sparta, 8 miles away from Marissa. I picked him up, and I brought him to our place.
Oh, he flew to Sparta?
Yeah.
On what kind of plane?
He had a little Bonanza.
Okay, so he just...
And all day, Leo, it was such a remarkable thing to this little kid from Marissa. All day, he was tall and looking over my shoulder. Why are you doing? He didn't cut me down or nothing. He said, well, why are you doing that? Well, how come you did that? Well, what you doing that? Then he put me in his plane and flew me back to Hope, Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
With Ed and I. The next day was like a drunk meeting Jesus. He showed me so much. He taught me so much. No, not in that one day, but he showed me where to go do it. And it's, you know, my little inquisitive brain. And he said, one thing I'm going to leave with you. You go study 1933, 1934 Bell Lab study of the human ear.
Oh, yeah.
Of how we hear Fletcher, Munson.
Is that the
curve.
Nyquist? Oh, it's the Munson stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that. And for the next few years...
Look at this. Bob's got a book. Did you write a book?
1976.
This is a book called The Practical Guide for Concert Sound. So, volume 2.
Yeah. Well, I put a little bit in there about church sound and some rear stuff. Some
Is this still, can people get this at the Heil Sound? HeilSound.com.
Yeah, it's $10 from Heil Sound.
So here's the Fletcher Munson curve that you were talking about. I don't know if I'm going to hold it up to the camera.
See,
maybe
the
people
problem
can
is
see
that people don't pay attention to what happened in 1933, but
This is how the ear responds to various frequencies?
yeah, and notice it's very, very different at low frequencies and at levels. At the high level of about 120 dB, it's kind of flat.
Yeah.
That's why people like loud music. They can hear everything.
They can hear it all. But you look at how much it drops at the bottom level there.
That's why you have a loudness button on your radio.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was what really turned me on to articulation in my ham radio microphones, because between 2 and 4K, that's where I really need to hear the difference between an S and an F and a P and a D. And so we built that in our ham radio. Well, all of that goes into each of the Heil microphones, whether it be the PR40, the new little PR31.
I love this. We were one of the first people to have this little mic. I just love this little mic. Dvorak stole it from me, by the way.
Yeah, I remember that.
One that we
I saw that.
He has no appreciation for what he has. I'm getting it back.
We have a custom shop, and Jason builds all this stuff.
Look at that. That's pretty.
This was built for Carrie Underwood. We matched all of her dresses on that last tour.
So cool. We made, I think we made Brian Brushwood carry the red mic into the field at South by Southwest.
But the situation is that articulation is golden. You lay it on top of this wide frequency response and this 40 dB a rear, and I'm having guys toss out everything. I don't care what it is. And we're talking Robert Scoville, great FOH front of the house engineer for Tom Petty, as well as his live producer in recording. He did a thing this past year, and he published it in Pro Sound News, where he took Neumann and Telefunken and, of course, Assure and all these different mics, and he did a shootout, and the Heil PR35 won, and that's what went on the tour with him. I think about 8 of them. And we were just so honored, because you don't tell those kind of people what they're going to use. It's all what they hear. And the performance of the microphone is what does it. And come around to answer one other question, Leo.
Yeah.
We don't do much advertising. I wanted to make sure the product is right, and the product speaks for itself. Every day, my computer, I have 2 of them in here this morning. When I opened it up, from 2 different groups, big-time groups, wanting our microphones. They're coming to us because they've heard it from all these others, where you got so many top-level artists, over 60 of them.
That's your salesman is this.
And so eventually it will get there. Sarah runs a great tight ship at Heil Sound, and we're doing very well. The ham radio thing,
right there,
all of
sitting
that
in the background.
So we're
running the ship.
Running the ship. That's right. And so we let the product speak for itself, and I think that's the way to do it.
Are the amateur products the same as the amateur radio products? The same as the? Not
at all.
They're differently designed.
Now, what's funny is that, maybe not funny, but the situation is, in the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of hams are using PR40s and 30s.
Yeah,
and
I thought
stuff.
that they were. I thought they were.
Well, they're coming around to that, because now they're looking for better audio, and they have better microphones.
Right.
So that all works.
And you bring them along from the ham,
Exactly.
and they start to see the other things you have.
We're just getting ready to introduce 5 new products to the ham. Nobody's even seen this one yet. This is going to go out at Dayton in May, and we're just starting to build it, called the HM12. Very unique microphone, but I've borrowed some of the PR40 and the PR20 aspects of the cartridge in that one, and it won't get down as low in frequency because we don't need it for ham radio, but it gets it's really nice.
Let me ask you, are you going for flat sound?
No. You have to take in consideration that Fletcher Munson curve you just
you don't want flat sound, because the ear isn't flat.
I have to laugh sometimes when I hear these guys say, "Oh, I have perfect pitch and I have absolutely flat hearing, and so I want my response absolutely flat." No, you don't. Because if you did, you couldn't understand what was being said. But a lot of people don't realize everything we have, telephones, landlines, wireless, cell phones, car radios, scanners, anything is equalized. It has some form of equalization when it was manufactured.
Right.
And a lot of people, it don't have bass and treble on it maybe. But somewhere in there it was designed to meet the Fletcher Munson loss of your ear. So that's important.
Even MP3s?
Everything.
Oh, absolutely, MP3s. Or you don't like MP3s?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but they are. They really would, or you wouldn't be able to hear what you do hear.
You make so many different microphones. The PR40 is what we use for voice, primarily because of its rejection and its nice bass response. But you make microphones for drums. You make microphones. I have the fin. You make decorative microphones. He brought me a new glowing fin. I showed you that earlier.
Yeah, we were playing around
plug
with
it in.
that,
It's
really.
upstairs now, glowing. ZZ Top uses that one.
Yeah. It's cool.
But besides the PR40, you have a 30. You have a 20. You have a 22.
22.
So how do people who are listening? How do they choose a microphone? Is it by price? Is it by?
I hope it's not by price. The best way is on the website, but a lot of them call me. I answer my own phone there, or emails. I get hundreds a day, and I answer them, and I let them know, and I go in and let them have my response. And I've been doing this a few years, and I can.
You know a little bit about it.
I can. Well, I don't that's not an egotistical statement, but man, I've been around. I've been on a lot of big stages, and I can respond to you what this group is doing.
Right.
Maybe that'll work for you.
Pass it along.
Yeah.
There is a great microphone primer on the website. If you go to heilsound.com and you can download a PDF, it all starts with the microphone. He gives that away. You have exactly what we've been talking about, including the Fletcher Munson curve. It's all on this website, so you can really learn all about it. There's a printed version as well.
That's
Thank
actually
you. That's
one
great.
of the chapters out of the
That's great to
practical
have.
guidebook, and with a little more.
Really? I mean, this has illustrations.
Yeah, it's a little better.
So people can download this as well. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, Michelle put it up there, and you can
This is great.
bring it down.
I should read this. All I do is I just do whatever you say, Bob.
One of the things that I want to tell, I just mentioned Michelle. Michelle does all of our graphics and stuff, and Greg does all of our artists and relations and so on. But they just got our Facebook page going.
Oh, where's that?
Facebook and also Twitter.
Oh, you are in.
They've got a contest up there. It's Steven, our director of operations, and Jerry back home. They did a thing where you can get it all right.
I already liked you. I did. I already liked you. See, I pressed the like button. If you go to Heil Sound.
You mean on Facebook?
On Facebook.
Well, now you can enter our contest because they're giving away a microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
PR22 on there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oops.
You can do that.
Somebody's chatting with me.
On Facebook?
Yeah. Tom Joyner's custom mic. These are pretty. I love these custom ones. So you just add some paint.
Well, that was a little different for them, and that's how
People ask me where I got this fine gold mic.
There's only 2 of those on the planet, but
Who else has one?
Uh-oh.
I forget somebody.
I think it's God.
Somebody unimportant.
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh, maybe.
We're Limbo. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a beautiful mic. He uses an RE20, I think,
Yeah.
RE27. A lot of broadcasters think they're getting a great sound with those Electro Voice mics.
Yeah,
Also large diaphragm condenser mics.
Well, it's a dynamic, but it's not large diameter.
It's not as large as this.
Now, and they look like this, but they're not doing the same rejection that you're talking about, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a big ad for Heil Sound. Yes, I do.
And the other thing
See
is
that sticker there on every shot, baby.
the other thing
I'm a
that's-
huge fan of Bob.
The other thing is kind of neat.
Can you take that apart?
The PR40
Yeah.
would have been on the market 2 months earlier.
Yeah.
KMOX. I was at KMOX for 25 years on the air,
I didn't know that. What were you doing?
High Tech Heil.
With Jim White.
1977.
You used to listen to High Tech Heil?
I did. I didn't know it, but I did.
That's where he got all his chops, Bob.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, the thing is that I did television in St. Louis too for many years. But in 1977, one of my ham radio buddies was Jim White. And Jim was the nighttime dude at KMOX.
Great, one of the great stations of all time.
First time I was ever on the radio was calling into the Jim White show.
You're kidding.
Did he hang up on you?
No, I
was famous for
answered
that,
a
wasn't
trivia question correctly.
There's Bob and Jim.
I was afraid he was going to hang up on me.
KOMX, the voice of St. Louis.
Jim's crazy.
Yeah.
Jim's crazy. We lost him a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Great
I
friend.
was
But he
sad.
was a ham. And I would talk to him on 2 meters going home at night. And so he said, hey, you ought to come in. Let's do a show. Okay. Well, we got bombarded. And the phones went off the hook. So then Mr. Highland, who was the manager of vice president of CBS, had me going to all these shows, CES and so on. And Leo, I'll never forget, I went to the show one year and I did a remote back to Jim. And I said, Jim, I got this thing, man. It's a little round disc and it's got music on it and it's going to do away with our Norelco tape decks.
It's called a CD.
Yeah.
Yep. And
And,
it was one of those few things that came out of CES and worked.
Yeah. And then I got into, in 1989, I was the satellite dealer of the year. I put in thousands of C-band satellite.
No kidding.
In 1980, I started building home theaters. I mean, with the seats and the whole deal, Theo Calamarakis style
Yeah,
stuff.
you're not talking the home theater in a box.
No,
You're
no.
talking like an actual
We did it
home
for
theater.
like Ozzie Smith, a lot of the sports and so on. But I did a lot of home theater up until, that's what really got me into Fairview Heights, up until about, I'd say 2000, when all the microphone stuff got really going. And when you could go to a big box store and buy a home theater and a box for $450. Sarah and I decided
changed the business, didn't it?
The business just got changed.
Yeah, right.
And I got out of it because our stuff was expensive. I mean, because it was big stuff, you know.
Right.
So we had a lot of fun doing all those things. And the satellite thing, who else could do it? I started doing that in 1978, a ham, finding something that was 22,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun in those days. But
There's Leon Russell with his Heil.
yeah,
He sings with a Heil.
so cool.
Carrie Underwood.
Did 100 tours, shows with Carrie, Cam Beachley, Randy Lane.
Well, and it seems like concerts are picking back up.
Yeah.
Do you see that? I mean,
I think so.
Because a lot of the business analysts are saying that's where the money is now, with the way things are, with people not buying CDs and all of that.
Yeah, it's really quite refreshing to see that.
So you're making more than mics. You do headphones. You do what else do you do?
Oh, we do like the little accessory thing, foot switches and
all that stuff.
Kind of stuff for the control of things. The mic booms we have.
We love. By the way, I've used mic booms for years, and they always get limp. And this is the first one I ever worked with that just really holds its position forever. I just love it.
You, by the way, are my child. You know.
I am.
I mean, when anybody talks to me about booms, I said, okay, go on twit.tv and watch Leo.
See what Leo's
he moves
using.
it up and down about,
I'm moving it all the time.
about 30 times a
I
second.
have a very bad habit because what happens is I'm moving around, so I actually need to do this. It's probably not the ideal situation. But.
No, that's what we build them for, and we're very excited about that. And so we.
I'm the poster child for bad mic habits.
No.
But I am a Heil sheriff. Look at that.
That's right.
Yep.
New sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Bob, it's so fun. I wish we had more time. Actually, you and I and Tom are going to have more fun because we're going to go out to dinner. But I'm afraid we have to wrap our show up. I'm going to wrap it up with a appropriate song from Bob Heil at the organ. It's called "We Just Couldn't Say Goodbye."
Yes. Perfectly done.
HeilSound.com. Bob, very kindly since I discovered the Heil PR 40 by winning it at the Podcast Expo, the best podcast, Twit, 2005, I think, maybe 2006.
Yeah.
I've been using nothing but. We bought a few, but you've been very generous and donated quite a few to Twit, and I know we're going to build a whole new studio that's all Heil sound all the time.
We're looking forward to the new studio. Sarah and I got to visit with Lisa yesterday.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's going to be something.
Can't wait, yeah.
Your fans are going to love what you're going to do there. And so, yeah, they can always contact us, Facebook and Twitter, and then, of course, HeilSound.com. My address is there, and my phone number's there. So we're always there to help people. That's the problem. The big boys forgot about that.
What did the PR stand for?
Well, we had our amateur radio stuff, and a lot of people were thinking, oh, well, this is just a ham radio stuff. So Sarah and I started a whole different division. It's a whole business-wise different division,
right.
Different dealers, different everything. And I had to come up with a name, so it was Pro, but I didn't, everybody uses Pro.
PR.
You just shortened.
So I just did PR.
Nice.
We're all pro here.
We're all Pro.
Bob Heil, thanks for joining us.
This has been a real pleasure. Thank you, Leo.
Great to talk to you.
Tom.
And we thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time on Triangulation.